Modernism is both a philosophical movement and an art movement that arose from broad transformations in Western society during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Its most significant point was during the 20s, also known as the Roaring Twenties. It was a decade of significant changes due to World War One. In the Roaring Twenties, a surging economy created an era of mass consumerism, as Jazz Age flappers flouted prohibition laws and the Harlem Renaissance that redefined arts and culture. In the last video, we regarded the most important female and male writers of the decade. For today's video, we will focus on the main ideas and topics of Anglo-American modernism. From 1908 to 1914, there was a remarkably productive period of innovation and experiment as novelists and poets undertook, in anthologies and magazines, to challenge the literary conventions not just of the recent past but of the entire post-Romantic era. For a brief moment, London, which up to that point had been culturally one of the dullest of the European capitalists, boasted an avant-garde to rival those of Paris, Vienna, and Berlin, even if its leading personality, Ezra Pound, and many of its most notable figures were American. The spirit of modernism, a radical and utopian spirit stimulated by new ideas in anthropology, psychology, philosophy, political theory, and psychoanalysis, was in the air, expressed rather mutedly by the pastoral and often anti-modern poets of the Georgian movement, and more authentically by the English and American poets of the Imagist movement, to which Pound first drew attention in Ripostes, a volume of his poetry, and in Des Imagistes, an anthology. Prominent among the Imagists were the English poets Thomas Ernest Holmes, Frank Stuart Flint, and Richard Aldington, and the Americans Hilda Doolittle and Amy Lowell. People started to regard the Victorian age as a hypocritical age, having superficial and mean ideals. The hypocrisy of the Victorian period generated a rebellious attitude in writers of modern literature. Things that were considered beautiful and honorable during the Victorian age were considered ugly by the writers of modern period. Sense of questioning was absent in the mind of people from the Victorian age. People started to regard the Victorian age as a hypocritical age, having superficial and mean ideals. The hypocrisy of the Victorian period generated a rebellious attitude in writers of modern literature. Things that were considered beautiful and honorable during the Victorian age were considered ugly by the writers of modern period. Sense of questioning was absent in the mind of people from the Victorian age. During Victorian times, people adhered to the voice of the people who were in power. They accepted the rules made by the church. People started to take the law without questioning them. But the generation that came after began to have critical thinking. They raised questions against the decisions produced by the supreme authorities. Writers of the modern age refute the ideas and beliefs of previous era. The modern age helped to replace the simple belief of the Victorians in the modern man's desire to grow. World War One brought this period of the modernist revolution to an end, and while not destroying its radical and utopian impulse, made the Anglo-American modernists all too aware of the gulf between their ideals and the present chaos. Novelists and poets varied received forms and styles, in their view made redundant by the immensity and horror of the war, but, as can be seen most clearly in Pound's angry and satirical Hugh Selwyn Mulberry, with a note of anguish and with a wish that writers might again make form and style the bearers of authentic meanings. The most common topics we can find in modern literature are: firstly, the sickness of modern civilization to the effects of industrialization upon the human psyche, a culture only too eager to participate in the mass slaughter of the war. We could see this in David Herbert Richards Lawrence's writings. Then, the sickness of modern civilization or spiritual emptiness and the ruthlessness of modern existence, a culture that, on the evidence of war, preferred death or death in life to life. We could see this in Thomas Stearns Eliot's writings. Also, Pound and Lewis used to dismiss democracy as a sham and argued that economic and ideological manipulation was the dominant factor. Also, we can find the Celtic modernism with Keats, Joyce, Jones, and MacDiarmid. They criticize Irish culture. Joyce expressed in his fiction his sense of the limits and possibilities of the Ireland he had left behind. And in George Bernard Shaw's, he attacked the old superstitious religious beliefs as well as the superstitions of science. He was the one who pioneered the interrogative habits in the midst of modern people. Shaw openly challenged the voice of those who were really ruling the country and religious authority. He provoked that people come up with questions over morality and religion.